Chapter 23. As Superintendent Battle's train rushed eastwards through England, Anne Meredith and Rhoda Dawes were in Hercule Poirot's sitting room. Anne had been unwilling to accept the invitation that had reached her by the morning post, but Rhoda's counsel had prevailed. Anne, you're a coward. Yes, a coward. It's no good going on being an ostrich, burying your head in the sand. There's been a murder and you're one of the suspects. The least likely one, perhaps. That would be the worst, said Anne with a touch of humor. It's always the least likely person who did it. But you are one, continued Rhoda, undisturbed by the interruption. And so it's no use putting your nose in the air as though murder was a nasty smell and has nothing to do with you. It is nothing to do with me, Anne persisted. I mean, I'm quite willing to answer any questions the police want to ask me, but this man, this Hercule Poirot, he's an outsider. And what will he think if you hedge and try to get out of it? He'll think you're bursting with guilt. I'm certainly not bursting with guilt, said Anne coldly. Darling, I know that. You couldn't murder anybody if you tried. You but horrible, suspicious foreigners don't know that. I think we ought to go nicely to his house. Otherwise, he'll come down here and try to worm things out of the servants. We haven't got any servants. We've got Mother Astwell. She can wag a tongue with anybody. Come on, Anne, let's go. It'll be rather fun, really. I don't see why he wants to see me. Anne was obstinate. To put one over the official police, of course, said Rhoda impatiently. They always do, the amateurs, I mean. They make out that Scotland Yard are all boots and brainlessness. Do you think this man Poirot is clever? He doesn't look a Sherlock, said Rhoda. I expect he's been quite good in his day. He's gaga now, of course. He must be at least 60. Oh, come on now, Anne, let's go and see the old boy. He may tell us dreadful things about the others. All right, said Anne, and added, You do enjoy all this, Rhoda. I suppose because it isn't my funeral, said Rhoda. You were a noodle, Anne, not just to have looked up at the right time. If you had, you could live like a duchess for the rest of your life on blackmail. So it came about that at 3 o'clock of that same afternoon, Rhoda Dawes and Anne Meredith sat primly on their chairs in Poirot's neat room and sipped blackberry syrup, which they disliked very much because they were too polite to refuse, from old-fashioned glasses. It was most amiable of you to accede to my request, mademoiselle, Poirot was saying. I'm sure I shall be glad to help you in any way I can, murmured Anne vaguely. It's a little matter of memory. Memory? Yes, I have already put these questions to Mrs. Lorimer, to Dr. Roberts, and to Major Despard. None of them, alas, have given me the response that I had hoped for. Anne continued to look at him inquiringly. I want you, mademoiselle, to cast your mind back to that evening in the drawing-room of Mr. Shatana. A weary shadow passed over Anne's face. Was she never to be free from this nightmare? Poirot noticed that expression. I know, mademoiselle, I know. That is very natural. You, so young as you are, to be brought in contact with the horror for the first time. Probably you have never known or seen a violent death. Rhoda's feet shifted a little uncomfortably on the floor. Well, said Anne, cast your mind back. I want you to tell me what you remember of that room. Anne stared at him suspiciously. I don't understand. But yes, the chairs, the tables, the ornaments, the wallpapers, the curtains, the fire irons. You saw them all. Can you not describe them? Oh, I see. Anne hesitated, frowning. It's difficult. I don't really think I remember. I couldn't say what the wallpaper was like. I think the walls were painted some inconspicuous color. There were rugs on the floor. There was a piano. She shook her head. I really couldn't tell you any more. But you're not trying, mademoiselle. You must remember some object, some ornament, some piece of ornamental equipment kept in the room. There was a case of Egyptian jewelry, I remember, said Anne slowly, over by the window. Oh yes, at the extreme other end of the room from the table on which lay the little dagger. Anne looked at him. I never heard which table that was on. But there no more is Hercule Poirot. If she knew me better, she would realize I would never lay something as gross as that. Aloud, he said, "A case of Egyptian jewelry, you say?" Anne answered with some enthusiasm. "Yes, some of it was lovely, blues and red, enamel, one or two lovely rings and scarabs, but I don't like them so much." "He was a great collector, Mr. Sherlock," murmured Poirot. "Yes, he must have been," Anne agreed. "The room was full of stuff. One couldn't begin to look at it all. So that you cannot mention anything else that particularly struck your notice?" Anne smiled a little as she said, "Only a vase of chrysanthemums that badly wanted their water changed." "Ah, yes, servants are not always too particular about that." Poirot was silent for a moment or two, and asked timidly, "I'm afraid I didn't notice whatever it is you wanted me to notice." Poirot smiled kindly. "It does not matter. It was indeed an outside chance. Tell me, have you seen the good Major Despard lately?" He saw the delicate pink color come up in the girl's face. She replied, "He said he would come and see us again quite soon." Rhoda said impetuously, "He didn't do it anyway. Anne and I are quite sure of that." Poirot twinkled at them. How unfortunate to have convinced two such charming ladies of one's innocence. "Oh dear," thought Rhoda, "he's going to be French, and it does embarrass me so." She got up and began examining some etchings on the wall. "These are awfully good," she said. "They're not bad," said Poirot. He hesitated, looking at Anne. "Mademoiselle," he said at last, "I wonder if I might ask you to do me a favor. Oh, nothing to do with the murder. This is an entirely private and personal matter." Anne looked a little surprised. Poirot went on speaking in a slightly embarrassed manner. "It is, you understand, that Christmas is coming on, and I have to buy presents for many nieces and grandnieces. And it is a little difficult to choose what young ladies like in this present time. My tastes, alas, are rather old-fashioned." "Yes," said Anne kindly. "Silk stockings now. Are silk stockings a welcome present to receive?" "Yes, indeed. It's always nice to be given stockings." You relieve my mind. I will ask my favor. I've obtained some different colors. There are, I think, about 15 or 16 pairs. Would you be so amiable so as to look through them and set aside half a dozen pairs that seem to you the most desirable?" "Certainly I will," said Anne, rising with a laugh. Poirot directed her towards a table in an alcove, a table whose contents were strangely at variance, had she but known it, with the well-known order and neatness of Hercule Poirot. There were stockings piled up in untidy heaps, some fur-lined gloves, calendars, and boxes of bonbons. "I send off my parcels very much," Poirot explained. "See, mademoiselle, here are the stockings. Select me, I pray of you, 6 pairs." He turned, intercepting Rhoda, who was following him. "As for mademoiselle here, I have a little treat for her, a treat that would be no treat to you, I fancy, Mademoiselle Meredith." "What is it?" cried Rhoda. He lowered his voice. "A knife, mademoiselle, with which 12 people once stabbed a man. It was given to me as a souvenir by the Compagnie Internationale des Wagons-Lits." "Horrible!" cried Anne. "Oh, let me see," said Rhoda. Poirot led her through the other room, talking as he went. "It was given to me by the Compagnie Internationale des Wagons-Lits because they passed out of the room. They returned 3 minutes later, and came towards them. I think these 6 are the nicest, Monsieur Poirot. Both these are very good evening shades, and this lighter color would be nice when summer comes and it's daylight in the evening." He offered them more syrup, which they refused, and finally accompanied them to the door, still talking genially. When they had finally departed, he returned to the room and went straight to the littered table. The pile of stockings still lay in a confused heap. Poirot counted the 6 selected pairs and then went on with the counting of the others. He had brought 19 pairs. There were now only 17. He nodded his head slowly. Chapter 24. On arrival in London, Superintendent Battle came straight to Poirot. Anne and Rhoda had been gone an hour or more. Without more ado, the superintendent recounted the result of his researches in Devonshire. "We're on to it, not a doubt of it," he finished. That's what Shaitana was aiming at with his domestic accident business. But what gets me is the motive. Why did she want to kill the woman? I think I can help you there, my friend. Go ahead, Monsieur Poirot. This afternoon I conducted a little experiment. I induced Mademoiselle and a friend to come here. I put them to my usual questions as to what there was in the room that night. Battle looked at him curiously. You're very keen on that question. Yes, it's useful. It tells me a good deal. Mademoiselle Meredith was suspicious, very suspicious. She takes nothing for granted, that young lady. So that good dog, Hercule Poirot, he does one of his best tricks. He lays a clumsy amateur's trap. Mademoiselle mentions a case of jewelry. I say, it was not that at the opposite end of the room from the table with the dagger. Mademoiselle does not fall into the trap. She avoids it cleverly, and after that she is pleased with herself and her vigilance relaxes. So that is the object of this visit, to get her to admit that she knew where the dagger was, and that she noticed it. Her spirits rise when she has, as she thinks, defeated me. She talked quite freely about the jewelry. She has noticed many details of it. There is nothing else in the room that she remembers except that vase of chrysanthemums needed its water changing. Well, it is significant that, suppose we knew nothing about this girl, her words would give us a clue to her character. She notices flowers. She is then fond of flowers. No, since she does not mention a very big bowl of early tulips, which would at once have attracted the attention of a flower lover. No, it is a paid companion who speaks, the girl whose duty it has been to put fresh water in the vases. And allied to that, there is a girl who loves and notices jewelry. Is that not at least suggestive? Oh, said Superintendent Battle, I'm beginning to see what you're driving at. Precisely. As I told you the other day, I placed my cards on the table. When you recounted her history the other day, and Mrs. Oliver made her startling announcement, my mind went at once to an important point. The murder could not have been committed for gain, since Miss Meredith had still to earn her living after it happened. Why then? I considered Miss Meredith's temperament as it appeared superficially. A rather timid young girl, poor but well dressed, fond of pretty things. The temperament, it is not of a thief rather than a murderer. And I asked immediately if Mrs. Eldon had been a tidy woman. You replied that no, she had not been tidy. I formed a hypothesis, supposing that Anne Meredith was a girl with a weak streak in her character, the kind of girl who takes little things from the big shops. Supposing that, poor and yet loving free things, she helped herself once or twice to things from her employer. A brooch, perhaps, an odd half-crown or two, a string of beads. Mrs. Eldon, careless, untidy, would put down these disappearances to her own carelessness. She would not suspect her gentle little mother's help. But now suppose a different type of employer who did notice accused Anne Meredith of theft. That would be a possible motive for murder. As I said the other evening, Miss Meredith would only commit a murder through fear. She knows that her employer will be able to prove the theft. There is only one thing that can save her. Her employer must die, and so she changes the bottles and Mrs. Benson dies. Ironically enough, convinced that the mistake is her own, and not suspecting for a minute that the frightened girl has had a hand in it. It's possible, said Superintendent Battle. It's only a hypothesis, but it's possible. It is a little more than possible, my friend. It is also probable. For this afternoon I laid a little trap, nicely baited. The real trap. After the sham one had been circumvented, if what I suspected is true, Anne Meredith will never be able to resist a really expensive pair of stockings. I asked her to aid me. I let her know carefully that I'm not sure exactly how many stockings there are. I go out of the room, leaving her alone, and the result, my friend, is that now I have 17 pairs of stockings instead of 19, and the 2 pairs have gone away in Anne Meredith's handbag. Whew! Superintendent Battle whistled. What a risk to take, though. What does she think I suspect her of? Murder? What is the risk, then, in stealing a pair of 2 pairs of stockings? I'm not looking for a thief, and besides, a thief or kleptomaniac is always the same, convinced that she can get away with it. Battle nodded his head. That's true, though incredibly stupid. The pitcher goes to the well after some time. Well, I think between us we were right fairly clearly at the truth. Anne Meredith was caught stealing. Anne Meredith changed the bottle from one shelf to the other. We know that was murder, but I'm damned if we could prove it. Successful crime number 2. Roberts gets away with it. Anne Meredith gets away with it. But what about Shaitana? Did Anne Meredith kill Shaitana? He remained silent for a moment or two. Then he shook his head. It doesn't work out right, he said reluctantly. She is not one to take a risk. Change a couple of bottles, yes, she knew one could fasten them on her. It was absolutely safe because anyone might have done it. Of course, it might not have worked. Mrs. Benson might have noticed before she drank the stuff, or she mightn't have died from it. It was what I call a hopeful kind of murder. It might work or it might not. Actually, it did. But Shaitana was a very different pair of shoes. That was deliberate, audacious, purposeful murder. Poirot nodded his head. I agree with you. The two types of crimes are not the same. Battle rubbed his nose. So that seems to wipe her out as far as he's concerned. Roberts and the girl both crossed out of our list. What about Despard? Any luck with the Luxmore woman? Poirot narrated his adventures of the preceding afternoon. Battle grinned. I know that type. You can't entangle what they remember from what they invent. Poirot went on. He described Despard's visit and the story the latter had told. Believe him? Battle asked abruptly. Yes, I do. Battle sighed. So do I. Not the type to shoot a man because he wanted the man's wife. Anyway, what's wrong with the divorce court? Everyone flocks there and he's not a professional man. It wouldn't ruin him or anything like that. No, I'm of the opinion that our late lamented Mr. Shaitana struck a snag there. Murderer number 3 wasn't a murderer after all. He looked at Poirot. That leaves Mrs. Lorimer, said Poirot. The telephone rang. Poirot got up and answered it. He spoke a few words, waited, spoke again. Then he hung up the receiver and returned to Battle. His face was very grave. That was Mrs. Lorimer speaking. She wants me to come around and see her. Now. He and Battle looked at each other. The latter shook his head slowly. Am I wrong, he said, or were you expecting something of the kind? I wondered, said Hercule Poirot. That was all. I wondered. You'd better get going. Perhaps you managed to get at truth at least. Hello everyone, this is Suryanshu. If you enjoyed this audiobook, do consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like. It really helps. And do turn on the notification to get notified when I post new videos. So stay tuned for the next audiobook and goodbye until next time.